Board of Public Safety meeting to order for the City of Bloomington. May I have a motion to approve the minutes from August 15th, 2023?
So moved. Natalia?
Rachel seconds.
All approved?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. And that's approved. All right, verbal certification of payroll.
Yes.
Yes.
Chief Moore? Yeah.
Sorry.
Okay, great. We have that. Let's go into police department business.
Okay. It doesn't work.
Hmm.
Just have to click on the PowerPoint and it'll work.
How about now?
There we go.
Yay. I like that. Hello, my name is.
Yeah.
Okay, we'll start with, as we do traditionally, calls for service. You'll notice we're well over 50,000 at this point, by this point in this month. As of the ending of last month, 49,684. That's a 43.14% increase from last year at the same time. Again, no real rhyme or reason as to how or why, it just is. They are all over the map and they are all over the city.
That is
Well,
just so strange.
You projected it, like you knew that this was going to happen.
Not to this degree.
Not to this degree, okay.
We expected, coming out of COVID, that return to 15 or 20%. This is beyond anything
Yeah.
we've ever seen.
Yeah.
I'm sure we've asked you this before, but I forget.
Are other police departments around the state seeing similar?
They're seeing increases as we expected, not to this degree.
Huh.
Okay.
So it really does.
Particularly when you compare the region, you have to look at policing because all policing is regional. You have to look at the region. We by far are much more than the rest of them. Ellettsville's up a little bit. County is holding steady, if not declining, and IUPD is difficult to sort those out as to what their actual calls are.
Are they able to assist, like, the Monroe County Sheriff's Department and ISP when they're able, to assist? Are they able to
But does
assist?
the sheriff and ISP help?
Yeah.
Yes, absolutely.
Okay.
Just like we help them. It's-
Yeah.
It wouldn't be rare to see one of our cars and the sheriff's car on the same call.
Okay.
Just because that's who's left. It's
Okay.
some nights it's kind of like who's closer. Well, I can match this one and this one. They can take that run, and this one can go over here.
Okay.
Versus taking one of our cars from the far east side and one of our cars from the far west side and going north.
Yeah.
It's just easier to pair them up.
Okay.
So do you have a working hypothesis about why, even though you don't know?
Well,
but-
again, keep in mind that the economy is not the best currently. So we're seeing some of that. We have seen a rise in some street crimes, which I'll talk about in just a moment. And quite honestly, Bloomington is again turning into more and more of a regional center for shopping and entertaining and various sundry items that you have to procure. So it's more and more people coming in all the time.
Yeah.
And remember, our visitors are now up, according to the Convention Visitors Bureau, between 2.5 and 3 million a year. And you can't quantify how many of those you're going to have at any one given time. I wish I could tell you. I just don't. It's something I haven't seen in the 30 years. I mean, yes,
Yeah.
we've got some rise. We have some rises in things that are they calls for service? Yes, they certainly are. A good example is extra patrols. You'll see a noticeable rise in those because they're being quantified now as extra patrols rather than something else. But it's not like we were never doing those before. It's just now called something different, so that's why you saw the rise in that category. We've had to recategorize some calls for service into explaining this is what this means to us, this is what this means to us. Here's where overlapping, collapse those into those two to make it easier for dispatch to kind of follow along, as it were. I can't tell you.
So we don't track the home base of the people involved in these calls for service?
You do, yes, but
So
there's no
we
way to
could-
quantify. That would be almost
We
impossible.
can't say, oh yeah, it's tourists coming in.
Well, no,
from-
because again, if you go on a disturbance run and there's no arrest made of it, we would know who we dealt with then, potentially.
Yeah.
But there's never a case report to later go back and sift data through. We would have somebody sifting through
Yeah.
2 to 3 million bits of data to garner what is effectively not much use to us. So, I mean, because again, it's sort of like Disney World. Their population is 0 at night. During the day, it could be 100,000 folks. It's irrelevant where they came from. The problem is here, and we're dealing with it. So, I mean, again, I wish I had a better explanation
I
for
like
you
that
guys.
hypothesis though, about, out of town, increased tourism and,
Yeah, and you have more people in town.
Yeah.
I mean, as our housing increases, as the apartments fill up,
yeah.
as people just return to the area, we're gonna see that. So
Like you
it's-
saw the bump after classes come in?
Not really, you see some.
Okay, oh, okay.
But you don't, it used to be yes. I mean, decades ago, hey, come May, it went down.
Yeah.
And you could count on it. Now, somebody looked around,
Okay.
when's how you graduate? Well, 3 weeks ago. And you just didn't realize.
Okay,
So most of our stuff is not university centric.
okay,
So I wish I would go back to that, but it's not.
yeah.
So.
Right, sorry.
So that's where we are for this year. Like I said, now I know we're easily more than that. One thing that we kind of track daily is the CAD screen, just to add a minute to this if I could. We were always looking at that 300 call margin where the county, and it's us and fire and sheriff. IU's not on it, state police is not on it. It's us, fire, sheriff, everybody controlled us, central dispatch. That 300 mark. Usually we would get there 9, 10 p.m. at night. Recently, we've been getting there at 2 o'clock in the afternoon, 2:30 in the afternoon, ending up in the 500s and 600s a night. So it's again, we're going up. I know he's gone up. I know other places have gone up. The ambulance crews are being run ragged at this point.
Wow.
I mean, they're being called from several counties away in order to take the burden and take the load. So it's a daily thing for us.
And I'm sure this fed into your budget request to the council for the next year,
Not so much.
personnel.
Well, we'll talk about personnel in a minute. We got to get back to zero first.
Yeah,
So it does us no good to go, hey, I need 20 more people when I'm
Exactly.
25 short.
exactly.
So
Yeah.
it's an impossibility for us, for any agency our size to add 20 when you're down 20. You're not going to hire and train 40 in a year. So
But is this happening?
It must be having a practical impact
it is.
on your ability to answer. So are you having to filter calls more?
We've always done that
Uh-huh.
because it's not like calls come at a continual pace. You may go a period of time and there'll only be 5 or 6 calls on the board, and you look up the computer screen, and you look up and all of a sudden there's 15 pending, or you're out of units. We prioritize a lot more. We wade through them a lot more and sift through them. Do police really need to be there for this? Is this really a crime or is this really a concern? Because let's be honest, there's a lot of things we do that are not crimes, but they need us to at least look into it. Because no one else either has the legal standing or it's one of those situations where you don't know how this is going to go. So we go and render it safe and then give it to the appropriate party. Like our social workers, we may go on several calls a week where we go in, render the scene safe, then the social workers come in behind us and they deal with the underlying issues where we can free up those cars to go other places. But there's a lot of calls anymore that like, there's no harm to the public, there's no danger to anybody. That whatever's going on is just irritating somebody, which is not a crime, we are not responding. And supervisors do a nice job of that. Now, somebody usually tries to drive by just to make sure it doesn't erupt into something more, but it keeps getting pushed further and further down the list as some things come in.
Maybe like a noise complaint or like that kind of thing?
Yeah, we try and get to the noise complaints
Oh.
quicker. A good example, and we'll get multiple calls on this guy every day. There's a gentleman at 3rd and Liberty, which is out by Kroger West,
Yeah.
who stands on the side of the road with a sign. Probably get 5 calls on him a day. Nothing he does is illegal. He can stand there and dance with a sign all he wants. He can be in the crosswalk as long as the light is red legally. When the light goes green, he's not in the crosswalk. He's back on the side, so there's nothing illegal there. But people call in wanting us to go check him. We all know him by name. He knows most of us by name. And you drive out, nope, he's fine, and we go on our way. But those kind of calls get pushed. We just checked on him an hour ago, he's fine. We checked on, now we use a little more care. It's 95 degrees outside. Somebody go check on him again to make sure he's not overheated or anything like that. But like the last week, it's 60. He's not going to hyperthermia anywhere in there from cold, hypothermia from hot. We're not going. We're not going back.
Yeah.
So, and that causes a little friction between us and some callers. Why won't you go check on him? Because we just did.
Yeah, I mean, you guys have to be tired,
The guys are exhausted.
Yeah.
you know?
So
They
they're
have to
calling
be.
because they're worried about him.
They are.
no,
Well, some are
that's
worried, some are
better
irritated.
than, calling because they think it's a
Well,
nuisance. I don't-
they think he's a nuisance, they think he is creating a disturbance when what he's doing is protected by the First Amendment. And, again, if we go back to that, what is the first job of any police officer? I think if you ask anybody, it's going to be protect and serve. That's not true. It's to protect and defend the Constitution of the United States. He is within his First Amendment rights. You may not like it, but it's legal for him to do. So that's what we end up doing.
So it's an opportunity to educate the public.
No, because generally they hang up on us.
Oh,
Somebody needs to check on this guy, click, and they don't even give their name.
yeah, okay.
So, but you're right, it would be otherwise.
Yeah.
But, and we've had some good conversations on things like that. Some people just don't understand certain things. Why can the guy walk down the street with a machete? Why can he walk down the street with a handgun? Because it's legal.
Yeah. the state.
It may be scary, but it's legal.
Yeah.
So, those kind of things. Speaking of crime, here's where we are to date versus the years in past. You will notice that the totals that you see are very closely nearing where you were in 2022. And that was for the year as a whole. So we are nearing those levels again, which would be about that 40% increase. Not everything is going to increase proportionally, but it's tracking.
Huh. Because some of them are down significantly, yet we're up 41%.
But again, you're looking at 2022 in total versus 2023 August
Okay.
was your
Got it.
cutoff.
Got it, yeah.
So we're missing 4
It's
months.
not year to year.
No. Not year to date. 2023 is year to date. The others are year in total.
Okay.
At least I believe that's how the analysts put it together.
Okay.
From looking at some of the totals, it would seem to be that is the case, yes.
Okay. It might be interesting, I guess, for you too, to know, month to month of each year, so you can track exactly.
Right,
where-
and we do that. We just don't present that to you because it becomes cumbersome
Yeah.
as a whole. They generate reams of data. Sometimes you're like, what does this chart actually tell me? But it makes sense to them on other charts.
On the second line for rape enforcement offense, do we, have an idea if it's like a lot of it is, dates, or if a lot of it is like stranger,
Okay. Again, the answer to that is fairly easy.
okay,
A true stranger abduction style rape, the one that as kids we always feared, the van that pulls up and pulls you inside,
Yeah.
incredibly rare.
okay,
Incredibly rare.
okay.
A lot of these, and I'm not going to classify all of them as that, are known entities, or there was some contact with the victim prior to, like at a bar or a restaurant. There was some type of permissive engagement prior to the act actually taking place.
Do you feel like a lot of it is IU adjacent or 50/50?
I don't want to even categorize that
Okay.
because I haven't looked into it enough.
Yeah,
And I don't mean this in a negative way.
yeah,
To us, the victim is the victim, whether
Yeah.
they're the university
Yeah.
or otherwise, so we don't really track that.
yeah,
Clearly, there's sometimes yes, this is a university student.
yeah.
But in other cases, it's clearly not.
The reason I ask is we have some public safety, money through the city that we're able to do some education with. So maybe I can follow up to
Sure.
see.
You wanna
just
talk
to-
later? We can most
Yeah,
certainly do it.
more targeted concentration of best use of,
Absolutely.
our outreach.
Absolutely,
So
because
that'd be
there's a
great.
couple things that we would like to see done
Yeah, perfect, okay.
that would kind of help us a lot, is start the education part of it.
That would be great.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
And
sounds
who
good.
is we?
Oh, Monroe County now, I'm a
Oh,
part of that organization. We were awarded some public, small, like 7,000 from the city, but,
We have.
yeah, that's helpful for outreach and posters and
Yeah.
communications and stuff.
Yeah, no, there's
Yeah.
some definite underlying commonalities between all these.
Yeah,
That if we can educate a little bit on that,
That's
if
great.
we save one, it's
Yeah.
more than worth it.
for sure,
So.
for sure. Thank you.
Traffic stops. You will note traffic stops have increased sharply. This is targeted area enforcement, where we're looking for guns, we're looking for violence, we're looking for other specific things that bring about crime.
And this is in response to where you're seeing a
Yes,
large
ma'am.
number of calls.
Yes.
And this
That-
isn't even the full year yet. I mean,
No.
this is year to date.
No, and they're trying to do these in between calls for service.
Huh.
So a lot of these, believe it or not, a lot of these are connected to calls for service. a red Chevy fleeing from a robbery. Okay, they're going to stop a red Chevy. Attempt to locate on a green Buick driving down the street on the wrong side. Yeah, they're going to try and stop that. There's not just a whole lot, well, there's almost no random speed patrols or things like that. This is connected to the fight against crime and trying to keep it in check. So now
And that's because of the personnel shortage and being able to.
well,
do
we're
more crime.
trying to keep people from dying. I mean, it is the
Yeah.
personnel shortage, but
Yeah.
as we'll cover here in a minute, we're still seeing the large increase in weapons, people shooting at each other. So we're trying to affect that, and generally those are coming to an area by vehicle. So that's why you go after the vehicles, because they're contained there. It's just those efforts to try and do proactive policing to bring our numbers down before we lose more folks. Here we are with this one. So, I mean, we've had 31 shootings at this point. Not all of them are connected. Last year we had, I don't know year to date last year if we had more, but certainly at the end of the year it was higher. We are trying to affect this as fast as what we possibly can. The guys are making good stops. We are getting a little traction in certain areas. It's just difficult when we don't have the people for what we call stay-behinds, where you go quell a situation and then there's no one left behind to keep that situation from flaring back up. Like fire goes and they'll set on an area for a while after they put a fire out because they'll have to come back as the fire starts. Unfortunately, we have to leave to go to the next call, and oftentimes we're right back at that call. So this is something that is a continual work in progress. Adult arrests, as we expected, they would be up. That is somewhat student-related, back to your question, Natalia. Not all of it, by any stretch of the imagination. You saw some decent weather in August, which puts a lot of people out, moving around, which you will always see that the arrests will increase then.
The public intoxication arrests?
No, not so much.
No.
No, matter of fact, I think there's a slide on it here in just a minute.
Yeah.
They've gone up, but not significantly. Juvenile referrals, 22. While it looks like a big stat, again, the law of big numbers, the law of small numbers, sorry. Not that really many more arrests. Then we did have a couple series of, if I remember correctly, it was a series of burglaries where we had some kids charged. It may have been downgraded to theft, but still, when they do those things, that's where we're at. Not a hate crime reporting period, so you'll see this again next month. Here's your nuisance calls, the disturbance runs. And keep in mind that disturbance runs is kind of a catch-all. This is strictly CAD calls marked disturbance. It doesn't include fights, doesn't include suspicious circumstance, doesn't include a variety of other things. So this number is actually quite a bit larger. Like domestic disturbance is not listed under disturbance. It's a battery. An assault is not listed under disturbance. So putting all those things together, and that would be a much bigger slice of the pie. These are the ones where two people are yelling at each other in the street, some guy's waving his arms in traffic, those kind of things. Training hours, 704, 3 officers to criminal interdiction course. Again, talking about hiding places in cars for both narcotics and for weapons. We have 9 officers completed their mandatory training blocks. 9 officers went to the hostage negotiators conference. 1 officer went to instructor development, the usual monthly canine and SWAT hours, as well as CDU training.
What is Moyar?
Moyar is a company who really did us a great service the entire state. Every year we have to have mandated training. It changes some year to year, but it's like SIDS deaths, natural resources thefts, those kind of things where you have the same topic year after year after year, and it's the same across the state. So rather than having to bring everybody in and put those in our training days, this allowed us to shorten the training days by they do these lectures online with a little short pretest that the officers can either get to in the car or they can get to after roll call whenever they can. So rather than having to take those 9 officers off the street for the day to teach all these things, hey guys, here's these courses you have to take sometime between 1 July and 1 November. Get them done. So when they can catch a break, they go and take care of it. It is probably one of the best things to happen to us in training for a long time. Training on demand, because again, it puts more officers back on the street.
How long have you used this company?
This company maybe 3 or 4 years, relatively new. It was one of the ones that kind of ginned up right as we began to see the beginning of COVID. I don't know that it had much to do with it, but it was a godsend during COVID.
Yeah.
That we put a lot of people through a lot more courses during COVID just to keep the training fresh and updated. This is just their standard. These are the mandates every year that we get through. Just like this month, we were all going through emergency vehicle operations out at the airport this week. So we'll all go through 2 hours worth of that, and then there's a component part that we've done on this in the past. Different non-hands-on skills are taught through Moyer. So, community engagement, we were down 1 this month from this time last year. 59 hours, 38 people involved. Again, the people involved are, quite frankly, due to personnel shortages. National Night Out occurred. We had a good time down there. DRO meetings with the service providers. The social workers collaborating with the Humane Association for some pet care. Getting ready to do something new. Really am hopeful for this thing. I think it has a lot of really good possibilities. Going to do a podcast with B97.
That's cool.
One of our community engagement specialists is talking to them about that. I'm not exactly sure what shape or format that's going to take yet. They're still in negotiations, but
Yeah.
they're at least talking about it.
Yeah.
So,
Okay.
and then Bloomington Nursing and Rehab had a hot dog and lemon stand fundraiser that some of the guys went down and attended.
Do Zooms count for community engagement events? Like if CONA, like Community Organization of Neighborhood Associations, like if you jumped on one of those and just talked about something?
We don't count them. Is that no?
Oh, okay.
No, we count these as ones that is some type of,
In person?
usually, yeah.
Okay.
Because quite honestly, if we started counting every Zoom meeting we're on for community events every week, you'd probably have a number of 300 or 400 or more every
It's
month.
still your time. Your time, you know?
It is our time, but it also gets to be one of those things where you do it so often, you're like, that's just a course of business, that's not something special.
Yeah, but it helps with like grants and stuff,
Yeah,
because like
to
all
some
those
degree.
hours are important, yeah.
Just to some degree it does, yes. Just a reminder, Citizens Academy is going on. If you guys want to drop in for these, let us know. September the 5th through November 6th. It's Tuesday evenings. We call it Tuesday with the Cops. So we've got a really nice group of people that are in this year. They've got good, very well thought out questions that really are all over the map. They're not directed from one perspective or another. There's college students in there. There's some, I used to say older folks, but now that I'm amongst the older
Yeah, I was
folks,
just
they're not
gonna
that much
say.
older anymore, yeah.
Yeah.
But we've got some retirees in there.
Yeah.
Again, a very diverse group of people in there that are asking some really phenomenal questions. And we definitely encourage anyone that is either signed up or you guys from the board to come down there. We usually try and do at least one of these a year, so those folks who missed out on this, look for it next year. Generally
your
try and do it in the fall.
headquarters?
It is at Headquarters
Okay.
Station. This year it is because we've got so much stuff going on down at the range facility. Some of these will be at the range, that training facility down there because of the space requirements. But for the most part, they're held in the main training briefing room. So,
No, it's great.
social work girls, 40 referrals, 385 contacts. Got them into Project Lifesaver, an elderly family member. That's a project run by Monroe Fire Territory still, that equips someone with either a bracelet or a necklace that is actually a radio beacon that can be picked up and tracked. It's for like Alzheimer's patients, autism, afflicted children that might wander away and be in some type of danger because of that. They're able to bring out, and I think you guys have got one, don't you? A radio beacon finder from some of the fire trucks that can track this person for us.
Is that a free service?
It is.
Wow.
It's funded by a grant system.
How does one access it?
I think you just have to look up Project Lifesaver and fill out the online form, and then it'll connect you with the local resource
Wow.
to be able to get the transponder.
Uh-huh.
And they're actually not very big. Necklace, or there's a bracelet on an unbreakable band for those who won't wear a necklace or can't wear a necklace. So it's saved several lives over the years. Worked with the client to get some financial assistance for some medication. A person was having to choose between food and medication, so they worked with them to make sure that those both needs were provided. Connected client to some food resources, and then they trained all of the transit bus drivers for trauma and de-escalation training.
Great.
So,
Yeah, that's great.
yeah.
Great.
And then we're on to general business. On that, I don't really have a whole lot for you other than it's kind of bordering on personnel, so I don't know if you want to wait for that or.
If you don't have any, what about, do you want to go to
Well,
purchases?
that's a good point. Purchases and expenditures, you will continue to see purchases for vehicles. We are still in that mode, guys, of having to find what we can find. So because the car companies are so far behind, we're away from our normal suppliers. So generally your normal supplier should be able to buy the bulk lot, and then with money you had left over, you could go back and buy in 1s, 2s, 3s. Now we're having to reach out across the state to different vendors to, what do you got on your lot? Yeah, I'll take that one. What do you got? Yeah, I'll take that one.
So it's a patchwork of?
It is. It is a patchwork of both vendors and companies. We've got some Ford, we've got some Dodge, and which is not bad. It's just not what we've traditionally done.
Will we have take-homes in our budget next year? A take-home car, like things, do you have take-home? We don't have take-home right now, do we?
We do.
Oh, we do have some take-home, okay.
As of currently, and I don't have the numbers in front of me, I can get them for
No,
you.
it's-
The mayor saw fit to order that anyone who's in what we call a critical on-call specialty,
Okay,
which is CERT, which remember encompasses the SWAT unit, K-9 unit, the hostage negotiations unit, all of those have take-home cars. The dive team has take-home cars. The civil defense or civil disturbance unit has take-home cars. And that name is really a misnomer because they're used for a lot of things that don't relate to civil disturbances. It's an odd contractual thing. That's what they're called in the contract, so that's what they have to stay in name and practice. They all have take-homes. Of course, admin has always had take-homes, and the supervisors have take-homes. Everybody has their own assigned vehicle,
okay.
because what we have found, not everybody gets to take them home, but everybody has their vehicle that they're assigned to after they pass the year mark.
Okay.
Up to a year, you drive a pool vehicle,
Yeah.
and then after a year, you have an assigned vehicle for you. It has, quite frankly, taken our maintenance cost and dropped them through the floor.
Yeah,
Our gasoline has gone up, not a dollar. Matter of fact, it's a little bit less than what and we've got X number of times the cars we used to have.
okay.
Beforehand, a squad car would come to us and would stay in service for about 25 to 26 months on average. Before it was just totally worn out. Now we're getting 6, 7 years out of some of the cars.
Yeah. I mean, I was when I was the sales rep, there's a difference between a pool car and then your take home.
There most certainly is.
Because you take care of them better, you know, like there's responsibility and, you know, and then you have a better comfort with it, you know, especially when you're talking about patchwork and maybe some are Fords, some are Dodges, you just know your vehicle better.
You're exactly correct. And it does, they keep them cleaner because they have the time, because when they go home, they can do it. What we were doing was called hot loading, where literally the black and white would drive in the back parking lot. It would look like a NASCAR pit stop. They would leave it running. Hardly ever would it go in a parking space. The shift that was coming on is standing there with their bags. They grab their bags, they put their bags in, and away they go. When we run that system every night before I go to bed, I log onto our system and see where we're at in the calls, see what's going on. And I could always tell when they were busy because I usually check in about midnight, somewhere in that neighborhood, and I would still see that second shift was logged in and running calls at midnight. It wasn't second shift, it was third shift, but they hadn't had the time to unlog out and log back in.
Okay.
So
The system is working well for the officers and.
it's working well for everybody.
Oh, good.
It-
Good,
this-
good, okay.
Good example for you if I can. I'm sorry I'm taking too long. but a few months back, we had a missing child because fire department, everybody was with us. We had everybody we had devoted to it. IU had sent us people, county had sent us people, state had sent us people. State had the helicopter overhead. About every fire department had people down there. And we looked down at the call screens that you could see in the car. We're not hearing calls. This is, what, 5 o'clock, 5:30? Night shift had just self-reported, and they're taking their calls.
Yeah.
So they're working on a whole different frequency package to let the on-duty set look for the little girl, whereas night shift self-reports, starts doing their job. Every day we have squad cars that are off-duty taking runs. They'll come upon something. You know, I was out the other night running a quick errand. Here's a car fire. Well, you got to get out with that. We're not asking them to do dangerous things or hopefully dangerous things when they're off duty. You come upon a crash. You come on somebody in need. One of the cars that you're close to needs a backup, and they code their runs differently on the air. So you'll get that code of, hey, I'm off duty, so that we know there's a plainclothes officer on scene. We need to send a uniform to replace them. But it's something a little more than run-of-the-mill, or the off-duty officer probably wouldn't have stopped for it.
Yeah, it's a lot of time,
It
it's a
is.
lot of sacrifice, so.
It is a lot of time,
Yeah,
it's a lot of
thank you so
sacrifice.
much. Yeah,
So,
It's like, how can we help, like, or, you know, like, how can, you know, just help get staffing, you know, so that your guys don't have to work, your team doesn't have to work as.
That is a bigger package that
Yeah.
I don't know that any of us is gonna solve.
Yeah.
It's probably a multi-year package that's gonna have to be solved. I think fire, and I don't wanna speak for either of these two gentlemen, we're gonna have to address some pay inequity between us and other agencies.
Okay.
We could go on and on all night. And
Yeah,
it's
yeah.
a fiscal thing, and it's, you know, something that the city's gonna have to face. That
Okay.
this is a competition at this point.
Yeah.
There are two ways to build any team, whether it's fire, whether it's police, and, you know, what I often tell people is look at the NFL, the NBA, the Major League Baseball.
Yeah.
If you want to build a team, you have two options. You can go to the draft, which is getting new people, training them up and moving them forward, or you can go to free agency, which means you're going to have to pay more to get the free agents.
Oh, sure, yeah.
At this point, we're so far behind that the draft is not going to help us because we can't send them through the academy that fast.
How is the academy doing right now?
They're doing better.
Okay, better
They're
than
doing
we
better,
were,
but they got so far
not
behind during
so
COVID,
behind, yeah.
we still have that blockage.
Okay,
And again, it's a physical structure. It can only contain so many people.
and it's also that not as many people are getting into law enforcement too, isn't it? Or
There is
do we see that?
definitely there
Okay.
is definitely a reduction in the number of people who want to come into it because, for want of a better term, the economy has so many jobs out there that are open for everybody that not many people look at government service when those jobs typically are higher paying.
Okay,
And it is truly a competition at this point amongst the cities for who is going to put out the most incentives and what are those incentives going to be and what matters to the generation you're trying to hire, whether they're going to come aboard or not.
yeah,
You know, again, it's back to the football baseball analogy.
yeah,
You know, if you're going to go on as an owner of a team and you want to go to the Super Bowl next year, well, you know you're going to have to do something to get those journeyman people to bring you there. They may not last forever because you're going to hire 5, 10, 15-year players to drag you forward. But you also can't, if you say I want to go to the Super Bowl next year, you're not going to go to the draft because you can't get there from there. There's years of training.
yeah,
Our problem is we don't know when the Super Bowl starts. It may be next hour, it may be next month, it could be the next 30 seconds. So that's the problem we're in.
yeah. Okay, so, but in terms of infrastructure, we are good with our our car policy
I
and
don't know that our
our
equipment
car.
has ever been better.
Oh, good, okay, that's a positive.
I will say that we worked with Jeff Underwood specifically and the rest of the people in the controller's office, Jeff McMillan, a couple years back, probably 4 or 5. Everything we own, everything is on our replacement cycle. If it's not, understand, everything is a consumable. Even a car is a consumable. What's its service life? A firearm, a body armor, take your pick, a radar gun. They have a service life. Well, what we had done for years is you would wait until its service life was over and then, oh, well, maybe next year we'll replace it. Well, the problem is along the way, you got into all of the repair costs that went into trying to keep that thing afloat for, and back to your thing on cars. We would keep a car 25 to 26 months. In that period of time, it would have the equivalency of over 300,000 miles in little over 2 years. During that time, and I know this because I ran the fleet at the time, the Crown Victorias would go through an average of 2 transmissions, 3 rear ends, 17 batteries, 14 sets of tires for that one vehicle. It was not rare to have $40,000 in a vehicle in repairs for a vehicle you paid $16,000 for. Now, there's definitely a mismatched system here.
Yeah,
Now we're into some of the cars, they're not running up a bill of more than $500 a year because they're getting preventative maintenance.
yeah,
And it's not every month. When we were in a full pool system, all the squad cars, their brakes got stripped off every month. They got new brakes. They got new tires every month. They got new this. That's not economically stable. That's not environmentally stable. That's not a lot of things stable. Now some of the cars go twice a year, whether they need it or not. Yeah, they go for oil change. They don't need anything else. You know, my car just got its first set of brakes in 4 years, whereas otherwise it'd been every month. So
no, that's a great.
Right. Any
Well,
other
thank you, yeah,
expenditures?
that's like a big picture, good picture.
you'll see things associated with the vehicles, radios. You're going to see some expenditures for MDTs. Again, it's all money that we have either encumbered and or
Yeah.
at that point. You will see a purchase order coming through for tasers that were ordered in
Yeah.
concurrence with what we discussed. Other than that, I don't think you're going to see other than some end of the year purchases, and I don't really know what a lot of those are. Typically, we try and get ahead of next year's whatever, because there's sometimes huge price increases on 1 January.
When do you expect tasers to be operational?
It's a good question. It will definitely be after the first of the year. I would be stunned if we can put them on the street beforehand.
Okay.
Um,
They're
Not intended.
Yeah.
They're ordered, or
No pun intended.
they're in the process of being ordered?
They're in the process of being ordered. That
Okay.
takes a little time because it's got to go through federal government to get everything done.
Okay,
Generally, our delivery, they say, is somewhere between 60 to 120 days.
okay,
Then training components have to go into it where we have to have our trainers certified. We have to have a master trainer certified, and then we have to turn around and certify the officers who are getting them. That's all going to take time, particularly as we get toward the end of the year. I would say maybe, and I'm just spitballing, into January, 1st of February would be the first time you see any more than a couple of them on the street. In general, issued by, we're hoping, January, February. We could go sooner, but I highly doubt it. Just the supply chain issues still exist.
All right.
So.
Personnel issues.
Well, here's the fun one. We currently have, as of today, 84 officers. So that means there's 21 vacancies. However, of that 84, there are 4 more who are on sick leave who are not expected to return soon. 4 in the FTO and 2 are at the academy. So as of today, 74 of us. It's actually a little bit lower than that because one of them's getting ready to retire, so 72, 73.
It's about the lowest I remember.
That's from the chief down.
Yeah.
That's what's there. 2 applicants recently completed their medical and psychological. They're waiting for those recruits to go to local pension board to approve. 1 certified officer currently in the background stage of the process. That should come to fruition probably by next month. There's going to be a certified only process. Again, these are those lateral transfers, the journeyman we're talking about, coming in September the 29th, so in the next week.
And one lateral hire? Or-
No, it'll be an open process for any
Oh,
lateral hires who
I
want to come.
see.
I don't know how many Ryan has, Captain Pedigo has scheduled for that. Usually he gets 5 to 10. And then there'll be an open process sometime in November. We're facility dependent on that. We're looking for usually 2 or 3 places that host us for those things. Just checking with those places to make sure that we can get in. So we don't have a date on that one just yet. And that should be about it.
All right. Thank you
Thank you.
You're
for
welcome.
the report.
Certain deployments, there were none in August that involved the ARV, I don't believe. If there is, we'll have to correct that for you next month, but I don't believe there was. And then I'll give it to fire.
Great, thanks. So for us, you can see our call volume is back up to normal from the past couple of years. There are a couple anomalies that I wanted to point out that we have identified. We have now, the past 7 years, we've now exceeded the entire annual call volume for the past, all except for the last 2 years. But IU has not stayed on track with the overall increases. They're actually on par for where they've been at for the past several years. Like they're not already at the full year's worth of calls has already happened. I also want to point out another one with them is that it looks like a lot of our fire prevention efforts are working. We've only had 9 fires, legitimate fires at IU, where we're normally in the 15 to 20 range by this time of year. So it looks like some of those things are working. Major incidents, you'll see 3 of them had 3 fairly significant fires or otherwise that may have made the news. You may have seen them. No one's died, no firefighters injured, nothing major like that, but we did have several families displaced over this last month. The heat mapping, when students come back, it alters the patterns. The big ones have not altered, where we talked about with Wheeler and Kinzer and all those. But what you will see is a higher occurrence in the downtown and the big red area up there that gets towards fraternity, the fraternity areas. So that's where we do get a lot of the fire alarms and a lot of, when the students come back, big increases. Response time goals. We have started taking this report, and I think I talked to you about it, that this is kind of we're almost there. We're starting to really hammer on that in this particular pie chart, the yellow section. So every one of those that do not meet anywhere near the standards, we're starting to dig into those. That is a lengthy process, but our assistant chief is digging into causality behind it, whether it was a human error, not pushing the button when they got on scene or when they got in the truck. If it is a communication connection error where they pushed it and it didn't log it, or if it was legitimately something with the crew that took too long to get on there, something of that nature. But we're starting to really dig down into those particular calls, and that is from that new system that allows us to take something as simple as a graphic and then dig down into it all the way to the granular call information. Again, we won't have trending on this until we get at least a year's worth of data in the system. So even a month to month, things vary so drastically from when the students are here to not. That's not even a fair assessment to do month to month, so that's why you don't see those yet. But again, we'll continue to report them. This one did have a significant improvement on the response times for the first arriving. But again, you have one incident, you miss it, you're at a 0%. So I just wanted to point some of those out. Inspection goals, again, we're on track to hopefully hit our goal. The compliance inspections really slow down this time of year. And this year in particular, there are 2 extremely large housing developments that are going online, and that has pulled a lot of our resources. So our brand new inspector has spent more hours in apartments doing the new building inspections than he has the compliance inspections that we've hired him for. But that is to get people in housing. It's a big issue in our city, and we don't want to be the reason why it's being held up. All of our other goals are exceeding previous years. And it looks like we're on track, again, to hit all of our goals in prevention for the first time, probably ever, since I've been here. Training, we're at the line, so we're doing well. We're not 100% staffed, so remember that the goals were built on 100% staffing. So if we're anywhere near the line, even when we're down, we're still doing good. This is a lot of the recruit training, and then the operational crews have been helping out a lot with that. It is a labor-intensive process to train a firefighter, especially through the firefighting curriculum. But everyone's kind of taking a bite of it, and they're getting it done. The MIH program had several wins. They got their 100th referral last month. They did get our very first referral for the maternal infant health focus. They had I'm going to put a very labor-intensive person that has gone and cycled around a lot of the social service agencies around the city, and they finally got them into permanent care. So they are now off our list. As our supervisor, our manager refers to it, they've graduated the program, and we're starting to see a lot more of these folks that we've been working on for quite a while graduate the program, which means they don't need 911, nor do they need the supportive care.
Wait, Chief Moore, can you tell me about the first patient referral for that? Like, I'm on leave from CASA, but I'm normally what would that be? Like, what would be a good example of it?
So, people that qualify for this generally come from a healthcare provider that says they've missed appointments.
Okay.
This actually came from a crew referral. We delivered this child. And it was no supportive care, no prenatal care. They were not in the realm of having any postnatal care. So they got referred by our crew to make this connection, and otherwise this mother would not have done any follow-up care for herself or for that child, just unaware of the resources that are there. So again, it's our very first patient in that last leg of the program that we've been building.
If say we know somebody in that situation and we're concerned, what's the proper way to get them connected to that?
You've got a couple ways. There's a flyer I can get you that has the MIH's direct number to it.
Oh, great, okay.
But you could also just contact someone in fire admin, and we'll make the connections.
Yeah, I'm happy to give out some flyers.
Okay.
I'll follow up with you.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
And then we got a great verbal report. Again, nobody puts things in writing for us, but had a unaware who they were talking to, someone that was talking about the MIHs and what the impact in their life has been. It was actually a really good positive that we had. So general business for us, I think it'd be really good if I could take a brief moment to update the board on where we're at with all the bond projects as far as the fire stations. I'm not going to get into Showers West. That is a much bigger issue that's Not within my world. I'll just put it that way. So we're in the conceptual design for it. Station 1, you will see bid documents come out relatively soon. This is trying to get it over the finish line for us so that things happen and it all gets done.
Can you remind me of that geographic area? Because like I get the numbers and the locations confused.
Sure. So
Okay.
Station 1 is the downtown. That's the
Okay.
one that was destroyed by the flood.
Yeah.
It's over by their
Yeah.
headquarters. We did a lot of backgrounds, figuring out engineering studies. Could we go back there? We were not going to, and then we could not find any viable alternatives. And it was decided that we may be able to go there if they made some major changes, and that's what we're doing.
Can you recap briefly what those changes would be in the design?
Sure. So if you'll remember, we had a flood. The biggest damage from it came from inside the building, not from outside the building, because it's built next to the underground river. When we got done with the flood, there was more water in the station than there was out. But the big things that are going to be changed, we have to stay within the same footprint because of all the different right-of-way and other issues. But where the basement was, there was an admin area, there was a training room. That whole area, so if you're looking at the front of the building, the whole left side gets demolished. Fill in the basement, build a new 3-story addition there, and then what is left gets completely gutted and redone after all the flooding and mold and issues that it's had.
It's a 2-year project?
I'm not going to jinx it, but
Okay.
now that we've hired a construction manager, they say we will be in it by next year. And they said if we could get a move on with the engineers and others, get them on board, we could have all 3 projects be in it by next year.
Okay.
So I'm just going to leave it at that. And,
Yeah.
But what I would say is you may get an invite relatively soon if we do a groundbreaking. I'd like to invite board members to be there. It is historic. The city has not spent this much money on public safety facilities in probably its entire history. So Station 1 is on track to go out.
It would house the same amount of crew it did before the flood?
It'll actually have the ability to house 2 more than what it had before. And it will also be a more inclusive design rather than big storage or big bunk rooms that are open sleeping, group showers. It's all individualized rooms, individualized bathrooms, so we can get away from some of the issues that we were having.
Will it look like more of the station on the west side?
Actually, no. I would be more than happy. We're going to start some outward-facing community engagement on the physical look.
Yeah.
And the other thing, we triggered a need to have public art, and we found a creative solution to that. There's going to be concrete panels installed that come in a wide variety of colors. We selected a color palette, and it's more of a grid pattern, and we're going to make it a student art project where they can submit art designs using those panels. But that will be the first public unveiling of that design and what the outer face of it's going to look like. So super excited. I know our firefighters, they've enjoyed being in a lawyer's office for a while, but they're really looking forward to getting back into something built for what they do and that it will function better. Station 3 is still at the conceptual design stage.
Where's 3 again?
3 is on Woodlawn. That is the IU-centric station. It's
Okay.
still a city
Yeah.
station, but it's on IU campus.
Yeah.
A quick recap, prior IU management, we were working on a new station because the site we're at is a lifetime lease on that property. As long as it's a fire station, it is ours. If IU wants it back, which the prior administration wanted it back, then they have...
Back to do something else with it?
Then they wanted to do something else with it.
Yeah.
Then they were required by the lease to build us a new station and help. New administration came in and said, we don't care, build whatever you want, you can stay there another 30 years. So we had to step back and punt, so to speak. But all the due diligence on that is now completed. The conceptual designs, we've gotten all the crew feedback, and what we're ready on is getting the training logistics, which is so far behind, the entire process to catch up to that. And then all those contracts will start moving forward into the design phase. So training logistics, we've done site surveys, we've gotten past all the environmental reports I think I mentioned in the past. It was not the greatest place in Bloomington, not necessarily the part where we're looking to build, but that site had...
Is that out towards the solid waste management?
It's right where our training center is now. So where the tower, where the gun range, all that is now. We were not allowed to build there until last year where they ironed out the floodplain issue. When Switchyard Park got done, it triggered a review of the floodplain, It put our entire training center in the floodplain, which means you cannot build anything in the floodplain. Anything there was okay, but you couldn't build anything. CBU worked very diligently to iron out and prove that it was just some bad satellite imaging that someone at the federal government looked at that put us in the floodplain. They used some old satellite images that showed the standing pools that used to be there. And they were like, well, there's standing water there, it's in the floodplain. That's all been ironed out. We now have more buildable space. CBU would like to work out a deal. There's a piece of property that we own that they would like. We would like roadside access to make that as a backup fire station should annexation or should something else happen to one of our stations ever again. So we need roadside, not driving through the police's annex area to go on calls. So that's where we're at with those projects. But you will start seeing things at the Board of Public Works. You'll start seeing things in the newspaper for all the legal advertisements to be compliant with law. And we'll start seeing some public engagement on some of the outward appearance and some of the things with that station.
Exciting. That's super exciting.
I think it would also be important to let you know that we got good community feedback from the neighbors. We want to be good neighbors. The number one complaint that we had wasn't the lights, wasn't the noise from the trucks. They understand that. It was the speaker system that sets off for the tones. So we have found options where they can have the daytime, nighttime modes so that it will not be blaring the calls out of the station at night.
Is this for all the locations you got feedback from neighbors, or just?
We did on this particular one because that's where we're building. But yes, we do get feedback. Sometimes it's when it's upset someone. But we went out to look at the new landscaping. If you'll look at what has been built around that station since we've moved out, it's all grown around us. So just getting some feedback on what does it look like, how does it fit into the neighborhood, and then we also had made a few changes because of the zoning. It's in the restaurant area, so they had to have more glass and things like that. So, but again, we want to be good neighbors, so we did get some feedback directly from those that live around it, not necessarily the ones that work around it, but those that have to live with that. So.
And hopefully the firefighters like Indian food.
I'm going to tell you, a couple restaurants took some hits in their quarterly reports when we shut down and moved. That's for true.
But we do have a new pizza place now.
We do.
I knew what?
We have our own Pizza Express now.
Yeah.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah, that's important.
Across the street, right?
That used to be
Yeah,
my
across the alley.
Across the alley,
Yeah.
yeah.
For my comforters.
We're thinking of a trolley system down the alley.
Very good.
As far as other general business, I just want to let the board know that Max is, I think, fully online with all the responsibilities. He'll tell you otherwise, but we had to really hit pause on a lot of things and make sure that financially that everybody was on the same page. So the past couple months have been, our internal audits have been going through what was the plan, who authorized what, making sure everything was ironed out. But we're ready to keep moving forward with a lot of the projects that we have hit pause on to make sure that everybody was on the same page. I'll get into a few things with the recruits and the personnel, if that's all right. Are there any other questions on general business before we move on?
Very exciting. I'm so excited for the fire department.
Yeah, great. Were there any large expenses that they should expect that you looked into?
Not in August.
Okay. You will have several coming up, some very, very big ones. But the only thing I can think of that may even register on that is we started paying the engineers for Station 1. So in all, their entire contract was around $300,000. We hit the 100% mark on building design. We've now hit 75% mark on bidding documents. So we started paying those invoices. Currently, it's being paid out of encumbered funds from last year. We just got our first bill that we don't have encumbered funds to cover, so we'll finally tap into bond funding from here on that station.
Are these local engineering firms? Or?
We put it out for competitive bidding before this ever got to this stage. The only locals did not have enough fire station experience. We did select an Indiana contractor. Our current engineer architect is out of Fort Wayne. It came down to an Indianapolis firm and a Fort Wayne firm. The locals had not had enough experience with fire stations for us to feel comfortable with what we were doing. Moving on to personnel issues. So we currently have 10 in training. We are down 5 positions. So we did have 1 resignation, I believe, since the board met last. So it was a last minute resignation, kind of weird, but We don't have any more anticipated throughout the year. There are several hiring processes. I would anticipate us losing 1 to 3 to Indianapolis within the next 3 months. I know that 2 or 3 of our people got a phone call, and it's nearly double the salary. And a lot of them are commuting from Indy down here for these jobs. So I would anticipate that. We do have 4 planned retirements next year, and we do have 2 that are kind of letting us know that I'm pretty much like 99% sure I'm going to retire, but they don't want to put it in writing yet just until they get a few things ironed out. So what we are doing is we have 7 left on the list that are moving forward. Our number 1 candidate, if you remember, we said that they had a personal issue. We had to back off. That is still an ongoing issue with one of her children. So we are going to, we worked with HR. They're going to allow her to remain on the list for 1 more job attempt. After that, we're going to have to move on and build a new list. So we can't just keep someone indefinitely in the HR system. But currently there are 7 that we contacted that have done the testing, the interview, passed the CPAT, which is that physical ability test. So they're getting ready to start towards the physical, psychological, and the pensioning process. We are looking for a mid-January start date for our next group of 7. That would put us behind a little bit, but that is actually ahead of where we've ever been with hiring before people are gone. And then we'll have to do another hiring process most likely in the 1st or 2nd quarter of next year.
To cope
Chief
with the
Warren,
expected,
oh, I'm sorry.
to
Yeah.
cope with the expected retirements and.
Yes. So we are one of the few departments in the city, we've been fighting for years, that are allowed to overhire. We will see if the new administration will follow that, but we're initiating the hiring process under the current administration so that we don't get potentially caught off and not being allowed to do that. So if we're only down 5 positions in the past, I could only offer out 5 jobs. Knowing that we're going to be down an additional 4 to 6 positions next year just off of known retirements, that's why we're offering all 7 at this stage of the game, whereas normally we wouldn't be allowed to.
Right.
So.
I have a question. About 8 months ago, there was a young man who had attempted the test, I think twice, and he had 1 more shot at it. I may have missed the meeting where this was discussed.
All of our recruits have passed the MT test. So we have a 100% pass rate, which has never happened. And I will say that that is only 1 out of 20 that needed a second test. He only needed 2.
Okay.
So, yep,
Wonderful.
missed it on the first, got it on the second.
Wonderful.
So we're super thrilled.
Yeah.
And that person actually got to go on shift because they were already a certified firefighter. They just needed the EMT.
Yeah.
Other personnel issues, we have 2 out taking advantage of the awesome family leave, the 6 weeks of paid family leave.
Is that new?
It was a pilot program this year, and it is in the budget to become a permanent program for the city. To put it in perspective, any of our female firefighters or those that identify as female or birthing parents could have taken 12 weeks off because it's their issue. Any of our other parents could not because it's not your issue and it's not covered by your unlimited sick leave. The city started piloting a 6-week paid parental leave for any birth or adoption, and our firefighters have been taking great advantage of it, spending time with their families, and I think it's going to go a long way to job satisfaction. When you miss so many weekends, holidays, birthdays, events, being there for 6 weeks after a major life-changing event like that, I think is going to be great.
Yeah.
But we do have 2 out on that. As far as I'm aware, we have no out on injury, which I need everyone to please knock on something because that's not a very common thing to not have that. And again, we're down to 5 positions, which is technically battalion chief, which we're holding him in interim status so he does not lose that position. We're down 1 chauffeur, and then we're down 3 firefighters. So that's where we're at.
So you're holding 2 positions?
Somewhat.
Somewhat.
1 paycheck, 2 positions.
Okay.
No. Actually, what we did decide to do, because we're kind of in a holding pattern waiting for the new administration to take over to formalize some appointments, is we're doing a prolonged battalion chief evaluation process. There are 2 candidates that passed the written test, knowing that it was about 6 months that we had to fill in until we get the new administration. They're each giving 3 months evaluation period to be able to run the shift. And we are, for the first time, not making up assignments. We are grading them based on how they perform doing the job that they will be doing. So that's new for us, but it was kind of a workaround. And while they're in those acting positions, they get paid as a battalion chief. So it works out for the employee, it works out for us, and we're going to have a much better evaluation process to figure out who is the next battalion chief, but we do have another one retiring next year. So we'll need at least 2, plus we have a new assistant chief. That could be potentially 3 battalion chiefs needed next year. So,
All right, thank
great
you.
questions.
I don't believe we have any old business. No? New business? Don't believe we have any of that. Petitions and communications. Do we have any public? No. Anyone on the Zoom? No. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
Move to adjourn.
We are adjourned. Thank you.
Thank you.